Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Pete, welcome back to another episode. How are you feeling today?
No, Batman.
The Batman. Batman.
That's right. Oh man, I am so excited to talk about the Batman.
So again, we did something pretty smart. We're taping on a Saturday, and we both saw it on a Friday. I saw it Friday night. I think 8:15 p.m. it started, which means I got out of the cinema a little bit before midnight. How about you?
I actually had tickets for the midnight opening on Thursday night. So it launched in London officially on the 4th of March, which is Friday.
Okay.
But I had tickets for the midnight Thursday, the 12:01 showing.
Yeah. Okay.
I saw some previews and reviews, and they all said the same thing. It's a glorious movie, but it's 3 hours long. You don't.
It's a marathon. It's a marathon.
Don't feel that it's 3 hours, but it is 3 hours.
Professional marathoners literally run a marathon in under 3 hours, right?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, we're sitting on a comfortable couch eating popcorn. Maybe not comfortable, but so
nothing's comfortable after 3 hours.
Yeah. So I quit the midnight showing because I didn't want to. Because the problem with theaters, and we're gonna do this one day. We're gonna do a podcast on an episode on entertainment crimes. One of the biggest crimes is you pay whatever you're paying for, your theater tickets or your cinema tickets, and then you have to sit through 15 to 30 minutes of ads, which is just, which is crazy. So which meant that I would have gotten home at 4 a.m. or 4:30 a.m., and that was a non-starter for me. It would have wrecked my Friday.
So you saw it at a sensible hour.
So I saw it at a sensible hour on Friday. I was lucky. The theater was not super full.
Yeah. I saw it in Dubai, and I was in kind of like a gold class type cinema. So it didn't have the full recliners, but they were like leather chairs that reclined a little bit. And it probably seated about somewhere between 48 to 60 people. And I bet everything except the front row, so probably the front 6 seats, were all occupied. So it was full, but it was a very quiet crowd. There was no applause. There was no, yeah, get 'em. There was no look out. Like it was a very, quiet crowd, actually.
That's a really good point. So we'll come back to that exact concept.
Yeah.
When we're talking about some of the villains in the story.
Yeah.
But I don't think this movie was designed for those moments. It's not like an Avengers Endgame where, you literally have every 10 minutes somebody screaming in the background,
right? Go
get him, Cap, or, because those movies I think were designed in such a way to evoke a sense of joy and emotion. Positive emotion, let's put it that way. Yeah. And it's not to say that you don't get positive emotion in this movie, because, spoiler alert, great movie, highly recommended.
No laughter, by the way, either.
Yeah, no laughter.
No
but
laughter.
Again, and I think that comes down to the type of movie Matt Reeves was making, and frankly speaking, I think he nailed it.
So maybe let's do this. Obviously, there's going to be spoilers. You gave the spoiler alert preemptively. Well done. Should we give our scores, ratings first, and then go into the reasons behind those?
Yeah. The TLDR for me is this is a must watch in the cinema.
I totally agree. I think that if you are ever going to see a movie in the cinema, the sound, the screen, the atmosphere, this is absolutely something that you have to see in a cinema. That being said, and I'm sure we'll get into this, I do have a lot of, or some, I should say, issues with this film. But absolutely, it is good value for money. You have to see it. You have to see it in a cinema. Absolutely worth anyone's 3.5 hours of time.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. I think it would be very difficult, close to impossible, to replicate the theater experience
Yeah, I agree.
for this movie at home.
I agree.
And not because it's a bombastic movie, not because the action sequences are so full of CGI and things like that. It's not for any of those reasons. But it's just the being enveloped in darkness and watching a movie like this, and then also in genuine quiet where you don't have the distractions of a cell phone, where you don't have the distractions of an iPad or a second screen or, anything else. It's, for me, a very crucial element to this movie.
Okay. So what is your takeaway from this movie? Is it your favorite Batman movie? Do you have some issues with it? Do you just think it's, a pristine work of art that can never, ever be, replicated? What's your feeling?
Okay. So I don't know if it's my favorite Batman movie.
Yeah.
I will say that if you're going to look at all the different versions of Batman movies we've had, and again, let's also caveat this right now, right here, by saying we're talking only about the cinematic live action Batman. Mm-hmm. We're not going to talk about any of the animated shows.
No Lego Batman.
None of the animated movies. None of that. None of the stuff that was either direct to home video. None of that. And don't get me wrong, those were very good movies as well. But I think let's make this an apples to apples comparison. Let's talk about the cinematic equivalents. So of the cinematic movies, I think that of the Batman, let's say, premiere movies, this is probably the best in terms of the premiere of a series, let's put it that way. In terms of overall Batman movies, it's still really hard to beat The Dark Knight with Christian Bale and Heath Ledger. But having said that, I think this movie sets up a potential for a sequel that could theoretically surpass Heath Ledger's rendition of the Joker.
Yeah. I think there's something that you said which makes a lot of sense, which is looking back at The Dark Knight, because I think that if anyone has a movie that they like more than this Batman, it's going to be The Dark Knight. If anyone likes, Batman Begins or The Dark Knight, any of those, Christian Bale Batman, Christopher Nolan Batman better, I think it's a little bit of historical bias that, to be honest, if I had to watch these again, I'm not sure if I would like the Dark Knight more, but I think The Dark Knight, that trilogy really put something in my head, and it's really hard to get that, let's say, baseline vision of Batman out of my head. So it's hard for me to say that I like this one more. There's a lot to like about this one. I still have some qualms with some of it, but there's an awful lot to like about this movie.
Yeah. And again, I think it's important because, of course, they haven't stated anything about a sequel. They haven't said this is the first in a series.
Absolutely coming, yeah.
But I think, and this is maybe us being cynical, but this is also us being very practical. This is the way Hollywood works now.
Yeah.
We all know that this is going to be the first in at least a trilogy.
Yes,
right?
I agree.
And looking at it at the first in a series, I cannot stress how good a job Matt Reeves has done. Matt Reeves? Yeah, Matt Reeves has done in making a first step for Batman.
Yeah, I agree. So, one of the things you taught me, and maybe we should start with the cast first, but one of the things, maybe not you taught me, but that you highlighted to me that I never really thought about, was that you have to look at the actor who plays Bruce Wayne different from the way that they play Batman.
Right.
And when you said that, it was just mind-blowing to me, because that's absolutely right, that there's some folks, Affleck, Bale, Michael Keaton, that played very, very good roles as either Batman or Bruce Wayne, but not necessarily both. Val Kilmer and George Clooney kind of failed at both. But those folks played one or the other extremely well, but maybe not both of them so well. How do you feel like Robert Pattinson played Wayne versus Batman?
So, great question. I think it's also important to caveat that this movie, out of the 3 hours, we might have seen only like 10 minutes of Bruce Wayne, and the rest of it was all Batman. Right? So I think in terms of skew, in terms of representation in all the movies, this is probably the most one-sided that we've seen Batman versus Bruce Wayne.
That's probably right. That's probably right. Yeah. Good point. Very good point.
A few weeks ago when we talked about it, I thought Robert Pattinson was going to be a very good Bruce Wayne. I thought he was going to be a better Bruce Wayne than he was a Batman.
And you flipped. You flipped, didn't you?
I have 100% flipped.
I agree with your flipping.
I did not like his Bruce Wayne.
I agree. I thought as Batman, he did an extremely good job.
Let's talk about Bruce Wayne first. Because we can because it's only like 10 minutes of screen time, and then we can say why I think that didn't work for him.
So I don't think he played a very good Bruce Wayne at all. Maybe unless you're going to frame this as kind of a young Batman, young Bruce Wayne, where I don't know how old Robert Pattinson is. I imagine he's in his early 30s, but unless you're positioning this as, Bruce Wayne in his 20s when he first started fighting crime, which would kind of overlap with Batman Begins and Christian Bale. I thought he played Bruce Wayne as though he was that Twilight werewolf. Absolutely. Where he was very broody, something funky going on with his hair.
Oh my God, the hair bothered me to no end.
Oh, I just felt like he played this really angsty teenager Bruce Wayne.
An emo goth kid.
Oh, you know what? You're the second person that told me emo goth kid. And I cannot agree with that more. I didn't know what it meant the first time. Now I do. And I cannot agree with that more. I thought he was an extremely disappointing Bruce Wayne. Nothing at all how Bruce Wayne, in my mind, should be depicted. Even under the worst circumstances, not at all how Bruce Wayne should be depicted. Super disappointing.
Yeah, I get it. Look, first of all, we're talking about a younger Batman, right? I think it was implied in the movie that we're talking about a Batman who's in his late 20s, based on timeline, plus minus, okay? Because he was like 8 to 10 years old when his parents died, and this was the 20th anniversary. So let's call it late 20s, very early 30s in the movie.
Okay. That's actually a very good data point, though. The way that you picked up on the 20 years, you're right. He's 28-ish here.
Right? Plus minus. Mm-hmm. And so at this point in your life, you've been alone for 20 years, right? No parents, rather. You are a billionaire. And I'm not saying all billionaires are playboys, but Bruce Wayne is.
Yeah.
That's his public persona, because that is really the exact opposite of what a dark and brooding Batman is, right? Yeah. And the whole point has always been, well, you've never seen Bruce Wayne and Batman in the same room, and then everyone laughs you off because, well, one of them is a billionaire playboy who's out cavorting with models every night, and the other one is a dark, brooding man who beats the living crap out of bad guys every night. There's no way they could be the same. But you look at Bruce Wayne here, who's this brooding, quiet, emo guy who hasn't been seen in the public eye for the last 10, 20 years.
Just the way that he's living in this, very... even this house is not the house that his parents lived in 20 years ago. I mean, it was like a haunted mansion, the cobwebs, the darkness.
They've moved out of Wayne Manor into like this Wayne Tower, which is fine. The Batcave is no longer...
But the tower should be modern. I mean, this was like some type of weird church architecture.
This was like Art Deco from the 30s,
Yes.
And then you have wrong. The Batcave, which is now a repurposed subway station, which I didn't mind, actually. I thought that was a great way of bringing the Batcave into the city, whereas before it was always depicted as him being in the manor like miles out of the city, right? So that's all okay. I didn't have a problem with that. But just as Bruce Wayne as a character, I thought he was very, I don't know. I just thought he seemed very ineffectual.
Yeah.
Right. And again, what's weird is, and this is where I think it gets really weird, when you see him shirtless as Bruce Wayne, he looks, funnily enough, very cut and very lean and very svelte, but he also looks very small and weakling type. But what's interesting is when they put on the suit, all of that goes away. He still looks lithe. He still looks thin. He doesn't look big and bulky like Ben Affleck did in any of the Zack Snyder movies. Yeah. But he still looks like a powerful presence. Whereas out of the suit, he doesn't have any of that power. Yeah. He doesn't have any of that charisma.
Yeah. Like when you saw him at the you saw him like at the funeral.
Yeah.
I mean, he just looked like ill, like he social like anxiety. A
scrawny kid.
Yeah. You know? Like, and not at all like confident. I mean, just like he grabbed some ill-fitting suit and put it on. The whole thing just gave me a very, very, it was very unfortunate vibe. You're supposed to like
you're supposed 60s Corvette. Yeah. You know, it's just
You're supposed to like Bruce Wayne. You're supposed to. Yeah, it gave me an absolute wrong vibe. I'm really disappointed. As happy as I am, Pattinson I thought played, and again, I mean, he's really redeemed himself in my eyes since he was this kind of teenage heartthrob in that Twilight series. Yeah. But I thought he played a very good Batman with his demeanor, and like you said, we'll get to that. But as Bruce Wayne, super disappointing how he was depicted.
Yeah. But so let's transition to that. That's a good segue. Yeah. So what did you like about his Batman?
I mean, there was something that I liked and didn't like about this Batman. First of all, I like the suit. I thought the suit was very badass.
Loved it.
I'd like to see all the suits from all the live action films next to each other. But my impression, especially the bat symbol that kind of came off and could be used as a cutter / something.
Batarang kind of thing, yeah.
I thought the suit was super badass. Okay, the ears were a little bit much, but the suit I thought was great. I thought he had the right demeanor. This suit doesn't seem to have like that voice morphing
modulator
thing. Modulator. But he had a good, strong jawline. You know, he wasn't smiley. He had, I thought, the right demeanor. And what I liked about this Batman was he was very clever. You know, he was a little bit detective-like.
Oh, man.
You know, putting things together. I thought that was very, very cool twist. What I didn't like is that basically he's just a puncher. And everything is about punching and kicking. And I felt that was a little bit John Wick-like. I get the fact, and we'll go into like the ethical issues here. He doesn't like using guns, apparently. He doesn't like killing people, apparently. That's a conversation I'm sure we'll get to in a few minutes. But I just thought, like, what, the guy's just going to punch his way out of the city? That's it? A couple of times he had like a grappling hook that he kind of used to trip people, but I was a little bit disappointed that his means of stopping bad guys was just basically amounted to like out-punching them.
Okay, so you've raised a few points, and what's funny is that in this movie, I as soon as I got out of the screen, I started taking loads of notes,
copious notes, as you told me,
notes. and it's because I didn't want to forget anything, and obviously I've already forgotten like 90% of what I wanted to say, but I still.
That's why I'm here.
I still have some notes. All right. So, like you said, there were definitely a few scenes. What surprised me when he puts on his suit, first of all, I think we can all agree, and this is, no subtext about it. Robert Pattinson, beautiful man. Very good looking guy. But when he puts on the cowl, right? Not just the suit, but the actual cowl, his jawline looks like it could chisel granite.
Yeah.
It was excellent. It was really much stronger than I expected it to be.
Yeah.
Right? Based on the few trailers we saw of him as Bruce Wayne.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, there were some scenes, and I can't tell you now because it's all become a blur at this moment, but there were definitely some scenes where he's playing Batman, and I couldn't help but think, oh my God, is that Michael Keaton? Like, there were some scenes where I saw a strong resemblance to Michael Keaton. I was so impressed.
Yeah.
What else did I really like about the Batman? First of all, I thought he was incredibly brutal and strong. And this goes along to your point about him, punching his way out of the city.
Yeah.
What I thought when I first saw this trailer...
He was a very angry Batman, right? Like the word, I'm vengeance.
Rage.
How many times he says. Like, really an angry Batman.
Yeah. And what I liked, at first I thought this was going to be a year one story. So like this was about how he becomes Batman. First of all, I am 100% glad I was wrong. A, we've already kind of seen that before. And B, it's not the most interesting of story. I think actually the animated movies have done a better job of that.
Yeah.
What I like about this was that this is the year 2 story. So everyone in Gotham knows who Batman is.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone knows that there's some masked vigilante or a freak, as the police call him, out there. Mm-hmm. He's already befriended Gordon, played by Jeffrey Wright, in the police department. So we're not coming out of this from point zero.
Right.
And you get to see that that rage is still there, but he's starting to learn, right? So what I really liked was when you say he didn't use enough gadgets, what I really liked was that he was using gadgets at all. I was so happy when he beats up those thugs at the train station, at the opening sequence, basically, right? Yeah. And you see him take on this big group, and at first you see him punching, but then you see them surround him, and the camera does a wide shot. And then you see him not just clinically take down each of these guys, but then use a taser fist to punch, and then use the grappling hook to pull people to the ground. I really liked that because it's a guy who's brand new to being Batman, but he's starting to get used to the gadgets that he has, and I loved that. I expect more of the gadgetry, right? And you see that his suit is very functional. It can withstand multiple bullet shots and throughout the entire time. I initially hated the bat symbol because if you looked at it closely in the promo shots on his chest, the bat symbol looked like it was made out of a gun, right? 2 pistols staring at each other.
Yeah, there's something in the middle. Yeah.
And there were rumors and there was things that, that was the gun that was used to kill his parents. So, he had it broken up and then put into his bat suit as a constant reminder. I loved when he took that off and used that as a cutting device and as a makeshift cutting device. I thought that was great. Yeah. So I was fine. And because it was so subtle and you barely saw it because the movie is very dark and fast moving, I had no problem with it. Even though in the pictures and in the posters for the movie, I couldn't stand it. What else did I like? I liked the suit. I liked that it looked like he was wearing reactive armor. It looked like he had not chinks of armor from a battle, or not a battle suit, from a chainmail, but it looked like it moved with him, which was really nice. I thought that was really good. What else did I like?
It's the first suit I can recall. I mean, if you kind of look at the evolutions of the suits, they're all kind of rubbery spandexy, right? And this one, it was the first one that seemed to be the most, as you mentioned, bulletproof and shock absorbing. Forget Ben Affleck had that one metal disaster, but
oh right, yeah.
But apart from that, it was really battle armor more than anything else. And I think all the prior Batmans had something that was a little bit more rubber skin, that was intended to kind of show off their pectorals or their, biceps or something. And this was really as you mentioned, armor.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think, which I think goes back to another point, which is this movie is very grounded in reality, right? Look, there's nothing real about a man dressed up as a bat taking on an entire city of bad guys.
No, there's
But
not.
when I say grounded in reality, I mean, it's not fanciful. It's not so future tech that, the problem I had with Zack Snyder's Batmobile, for example, too futury. And the problem I had with Christian Bale's Batmobile, too much like a tank. Like for me, what I really liked about this, great middle ground. You have like, a muscle car-esque Batmobile that seems very practical. I'm not saying that you and I could sit together in a garage and over a month build it, but I'm saying I don't think it would be impossible for someone to build something like this in real life.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely seemed to have like an element of, a muscle car that was with like some type of like very strong engine, right? And
Right.
I thought that was also consistent with, you mentioned like he had this old retro Corvette when he went to the mayor's funeral.
Right.
I kind of thought like, this is the guy's style. Like he's kind of if he is a recluse, he's living in the past a little bit. And, that's his retro style, that maybe it's his dad's car or, something that he's basing this off of. So I didn't love the car as a standalone, but I thought it was at least faithful to what was being done in this movie.
Yeah, it fit really well. I think it fit really well, and it was aligned with the thematic, or maybe even like, the visual style.
Yeah.
So that's the bat suit. What else?
But you mentioned the gadgets, and I just felt, I mean, you're right that there's a fine line that it can't be too gadgety, and Batman's never been the superhero with the gun, of course. Mm-hmm. But I really was, and I thought that the fight scenes, like, he was a very good fighter. Like you could see the rage, the way that he punched, like it was very intense and real and great choreography and acting. But by the end, I was just a little bit like, so that's his strategy? Like he obviously has some issue with fighting crime in the city, right? He's very dedicated to Gotham and to fighting crime and feels, like it's his obligation. And that's what he's going to do, is he's just going to go and just punch every bad guy. It just seemed like an inefficient way to fight crime. I was hoping that he would be, I don't know, have something a little bit more than just two fists and kicking throughout.
That's kind of his MO. He uses a lot of gadgets. I like that you didn't see too many of them. In the comics, in the cartoons, in the video games, the guy is, that's why the joke has always been about Batman's utility belt, right?
Yeah.
That he's got even like bat shark repellent. But the point is that he doesn't have superpowers. And in a world where there are beings out there with superpowers, how do you level the playing field?
The suit. Yeah.
The suit. It has to be the suit. It has to be the gadgets. And of course, it has to be his money. Which also, I mean, maybe one other comment about that was like, you're a billionaire or a supposed billionaire. But, as far as we know in this movie, anything that he did could have been done by anyone.
Yeah.
Right? It didn't have to be a billionaire. Nothing screamed billionaire about Bruce Wayne.
Yeah. So what do you think of the rest of the cast? I mean, it's a very short cast of like main characters, right? You've got Selena Kyle, Catwoman, Zoe Kravitz, as you mentioned, James Gordon, Jeffrey Wright, Penguin, Oz, Colin Farrell, totally unrecognizable Colin Farrell, huh?
Unbelievable.
Riddler, Paul Dano, Carmine Falcone, John Turturro, Alfred, Andy Serkis, and then it's a lot of little small parts after that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what did you think of the rest of the cast?
So I was really, really happy with most of the cast. Let's start with the main bad guy. I thought Paul Dano, I don't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah.
Paul Dano, I thought was an excellent
I totally agree. I thought he was exceptional as a Riddler. Totally agree. Very believable as well. I mean, the only Riddler I think we have to compare to is Jim Carrey's question mark spandex clad buffoon, right? In Batman Forever. I thought, right? That's the only other Riddler I think we've ever non-comic book versions. I thought Paul Dano did an exceptional job as a Riddler. Very believable as kind of an everyman who was just trying to, expose corruption and stuff. I thought he did. And he was very, not menacing, but he was very unhinged, after you saw him kind of like arrested, right?
It was crazy realistic.
Yes.
Or at least it seemed crazy realistic how unhinged he was.
Yes. I thought he was exceptional. Kind of excited to see him in a sequel.
So, I mean, one of the things that most Batman movies have done has been to not reuse bad guys. Yeah. You saw a little bit of Scarecrow over the sequels in Christian Bale's Batman's.
Yep.
Or sorry, in Nolan's Batman.
3 times. Yeah.
But in general, I'm a fan of, because Batman's got a really deep and pretty exciting rogues gallery. Yeah. So I'd like to see the others, right? Or at least I'd like to see Matt Reeves's depiction and his version of the others.
Yeah. Yeah. What did you think of Colin Farrell as a Penguin?
A few of the reviews I saw and some of the previews I saw said that Colin Farrell's Penguin was really not just excellent, but had the potential to rewrite the Penguin as one of the most significant villains in the Batman cinematic history, like Heath Ledger did with the Joker. I would take a step back from that. I thought it was very good.
I think we should distance ourselves from that praise. Yeah.
I think it was very good.
That's a hot take. That's a hot take.
Yeah. It is very good, but I mean, he wasn't the main villain of this movie.
No.
So he did very good with what he had to work with and what screen time he had.
He was just a thug.
But,
he was just a kind of an ugly gangster. I didn't find... He played it well, but I didn't find anything like menacing about him. You know?
I'm looking forward to seeing him in future iterations. Where I think, and we'll get back to that because I think what we can do is talk about maybe where the franchise is going.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of bad guys, he was good, but he was obviously playing for third in this movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really thought that John Turturro's Carmine Falcone was excellent as well.
And not only that, I thought the twist where he turned out to be Selina's father was a very, very good mini twist.
Oh, really? So, it's so funny because I was talking about that earlier.
Yeah.
I think that the writers expected that to be the twist where everyone in the theater would go, gasp, and then hold their hands to their mouth in shock.
Yeah.
And it totally fell flat. Not just for me, but for everyone in the theater.
I think it, in my cinema, it definitely fell flat, but I thought that was a pretty good twist. It wasn't groundbreaking, but I thought that to the extent that you needed something that kind of tied this together, because the rest of it is a little bit, we can maybe get into the plot. I thought the rest of the plot was a little bit manufactured drama. I thought at least, how Zoe or how Selina Catwoman gets into this, I thought that was actually pretty decent.
I did. I actually think that she played it really well. I think Zoe Kravitz did an excellent job. Catwoman, like in the comics, very strong, very independent.
Yeah.
And I couldn't help but think of the comic book character because she did a very good job. I think she was very faithful. Yeah. I didn't like the reveal that she was Carmine's daughter. I didn't think it was necessary only because, why does everyone need to be related to everybody else? I don't know why this fascination is in the DC universe. They did the same thing with the Joker movie, where you find out that, Thomas Wayne has some relationship with the Joker's mother.
Yeah.
It's for me, it was not necessary. It didn't have the effect that I think they were looking for.
Yeah.
And she had plenty of motive. She already had enough motive with her best friend being murdered. So why do you then need to take it one step further and say, well, he's also my dad who, abused my mom and killed my... it wasn't... For me, it was unnecessary.
Okay. I can take that. Let me ask you something about Selina, though. I like the way that she played Catwoman, for sure. probably, again, one of the more realistic Catwomen, right? What do we have to compare her to?
Halle Berry and Michelle Pfeiffer.
Yes, right?
Oh, and of course, Anne Hathaway.
Anne Hathaway, right?
Yeah.
So I thought that, Selena Kyle had a good or maybe I should go back. I didn't understand where she got this, like, kind of like black leather suit from. And also she's on motorcycles and she's got a mask, which was kind of a super silly mask. Like, I just kind of didn't understand where that came from. Maybe I don't need to understand where that came from. But I just kind of thought that, I mean, even Batman, who's acting a little bit as a voyeur, is kind of like, hey, she's like the lady equivalent to me. She's riding a motorcycle. She's got a black leather suit. She's kicking a lot of people. She's kind of wearing a mask that hides her nose. Like, I just thought that was, I don't know, it didn't really like click for me, to be honest. And also, she's extremely tiny, like extremely tiny, yet, it's a lot of physical violence that she's,
not just enduring, but dishing out.
So I felt like I really liked her as a character. I felt like she played the role very well, but I just kind of didn't see where Catwoman came from or fit into this whole scheme. It helped me to rationalize it a little bit with, she being, Carmine's daughter, and therefore she was really angry at him for kind of, abandoning her mother and abandoning her and wanted to seek some revenge against him and the syndicate. That kind of made it better in my mind, but the rest of it I thought was a little bit, didn't really resonate so much with me.
Okay. I mean, I liked her. I think I think all the choices that they've made for Catwoman made sense. Of course, like, barring the daughter of Falcone.
Yeah.
You raise a good point. She is like the female version of Batman, which is to say, not in terms of motives, but in terms of maybe just physical appearance, which is to say, when she's suited up, she also has her face half covered. Yeah. And, so she's also very good at what she does, which in her case is steal, right?
Yeah.
So I did like that. I think that gives a lot of parallels to each other.
Yeah.
And, I think they've also done a good job of setting her up for coming back in the sequel.
Like, I kind of liked, I remember Anne Hathaway, who was like a cat burglar, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that's how she met Batman, which is, she was like a maid or a hostess at one of his soirees.
And tries to steal from
him. And I thought that was a very good introduction. And it also gave her the skill set, which is not, punching and kicking, which I find, again, a little bit unrealistic for someone as physically small as Zoe Kravitz. But Anne Hathaway was like, look, I'm a gymnast. I'm stealthy. I can steal things. I've got this good kind of like con artist, game in me, or sleight of hand game. I thought that was a very good like set of skills that was, for me, a little bit believable. And, was also, complementary, to the Christian Bale fighting and, gadgets. Whereas I felt that Selena Kyle was like, no gadgets, kind of wanted to shoot people whenever she had a gun, and was just like, same thing, kicking her and punching her way out of it. So I loved her as a character, or I loved her playing that character. I didn't find it was the best positioned Catwoman.
I really liked her. I think of the three of them, I think she's the best. Actually, Anne Hathaway, while I think she was very good, I'm not a fan of Anne Hathaway's Catwoman depiction. No. I think in terms of, and again, my backdrop is, I look at the comics, I look at the cartoons.
Yeah.
This Catwoman was probably the closest because she is a capable fighter. And when I say a fighter, as in, I don't mean she brawls, right? That's not her role. Her thing is, I'm all about myself. I steal when I can. I steal where I can. And then I get out of there. But if I get caught up, I use my fancy, gymnastic-esque skills to get out of a jam. I use my whip, which I saw her, we saw her use
she
here.
did have the whip. Yep.
I like that. And then she's like, and then that's it. I'm out. I'm not interested in fighting for more than 5 minutes because I know I'll get my ass handed to me.
What did you think of the sexual chemistry tension between her and Batman.
I thought it was good. I thought the chemistry was good.
They share a kiss.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end, she basically says, "Hey, like, let's go away for the weekend." It's like, nah, I've got to like punch a bunch of guys.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
What do you think?
I again, very comic book accurate. I think they've had a will they, won't they / semi relationship going on for years. So again, and that's what I said. I think this is why I think they've done a good job of setting it up for her to come back in the sequel, because while she's not a quote unquote bad guy, even though she's a part of his rogues gallery, she's transitioned from being a traditional villain in the Batman comics into being an anti-hero / love interest. Which is unlike what they did with some of Batman's other love interests who were purely villains, right? So I think they've done a good job with that. I liked it. I liked the dynamic between the two of them, because she's kind of trying to get him to come to the dark side, and he's obviously very strong-minded and strong-willed, and he resists that.
Yeah. Okay. Andy Serkis.
I was just about to ask, what did you think of the supporting guys?
So Alfred is, again, previously, especially in the Dark Knight trilogy, played so iconically that it's hard to get your mind around anyone else playing the role of Alfred, right?
Is he, though? I mean, Michael Caine, I liked him.
Yeah. I mean, liked him. Michael Caine was a true butler, or consigliere, right? He was a true Alfred, looking after, Mr. Wayne. Andy Serkis, first of all, I always think of Andy Serkis as not old enough to be a butler. I mean, it wasn't that long ago he was in Deadpool as a superhero, right?
Yeah, was he? Who was he in Deadpool?
I thought he was absolutely in Deadpool.
I don't remember if he was. I mean, for me, his seminal role will be always Gollum from Lord of the Rings.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I thought they did Alfred a little dirty in this movie.
Yeah. Tell me how.
Alfred is, no matter what, one of the things about Alfred has always been that Bruce loves him.
Yeah.
And that he is Bruce's de facto adoptive father.
Yeah.
And in this movie, Bruce goes out of his way to say, "You're not my dad." And you can see like a little bit of Alfred's, like a little bit of the life dies in Alfred's eyes when he says that, right? Because he's raised the kid for the last 20 years. He's took care of him. He's trained him. He's supported him in everything he's wanted to do. And then it's kind of like you see him get spit in the eye. And then in Bruce Wayne's or in Thomas Wayne's name, he gets blown up. And then at the hospital, Bruce is a little cold and distant to him and accuses him of being a liar. This goes back to, I think, them trying to make Bruce Wayne a little bit more angsty, but which is, and like all the cool kids hate their parent kind of things.
Yeah.
But you don't see a resolution of that. Like if they had at least made like if they had done a 180 by the end of the movie where he's like, "Yeah, you are my dad." Like there's this great comic book page, and I don't ask me where it's from, but it's one where you can tell that Alfred has always worried about Bruce.
Yeah. And
you wake up to Bruce Wayne in the Wayne Manor, and he says, "Alfred, you don't have to worry about me today." Right? Mm-hmm. And he leaves on his table, he leaves a card for Alfred, and Alfred, like he's wondering why, he opens it up and it's a Happy Father's Day card.
Oh.
Right? And it's a very sweet moment for even Bruce to recognize that even though you're not my dad, you are my dad. Right? Yeah. And then for them to go out of their way in this movie to say that, "Hey, you're a jerk, you're a liar, you're not my dad.
You covered up my dad's stuff."
Yeah. And like, you know what I mean? Like, so I don't know. I think they did him dirty in that sense. Yeah. What I did like was, like Michael Caine, they give him a little bit more importance. He's not just a butler or a valet. He's looking after the business affairs of the company as well.
Yeah.
So he's more like, he's almost like, like
He's
the
solving
COO
riddles.
/ executive
Yeah.
assistant. You know what I mean? Like, and
Yeah.
he's a smart guy. He's looking at the
Yeah.
cipher. He's, so he's like, he's like the brains behind the operation kind of thing. And I like that. I did like that. But I think overall, I think they, and Andy Serkis, by the way, great actor, lots of skill.
Yeah.
But of course, in a movie about the Batman, you're not talking about Alfred, right? You're not supposed to.
No, I felt he was. I agree with you. An amazing actor, but not really, in my mind, has enough. I don't think he's old enough, to be honest, to play the role of Alfred. And again, I think Michael Caine did it, at least in my mind, perfectly. I just didn't feel like Andy Serkis did it right, and I don't think that's what he did wrong. I think it's just kind of like the material that they gave to him, and I think you're right. They just kind of did him dirty by diminishing him, and how Wayne was a little bit like critical of him. So I didn't think that he really figured in prominently in this movie.
Yeah, but on the flip side, who they gave a lot more importance to, Jim Gordon with Jeffrey Wright.
Yep, that's true.
And I think they did a really good job in that sense,
I agree.
which is to say, hey, we're not fighting the Batman anymore. He is a masked vigilante, but we're going to learn to live with him. Yeah. And where we can, the Gotham Police Department has to use the resources. So, he's the one who's bringing him into crime scenes. He's the one asking him to look at evidence.
Yeah.
And in full view of everyone, by the way.
Yeah.
Which I thought was brilliant, which is to say, hey, okay, so there's like an uneasy alliance between the police and Batman.
Yeah.
Right? And the only ones who are opposing it are obviously the corrupt police officers who want the Batman to go down, right?
So, that's a very interesting point, and I think that gets to one of the really important stakes in this movie, which is there's a very fine line between being a vigilante and a criminal. Because if you look at what is being done here, the police are corrupt. They don't like Batman because they think he's just this rogue vigilante who takes justice into his own hands, right? Mm-hmm. And then along comes the Riddler, who I think by all accounts is exposing huge corruption. And to be honest, you could also you could kind of take you could take the view that what the Riddler is doing is actually of greater importance to cleaning up Gotham than what Batman is doing, just beating up a few muggers on the street. I mean, that's kind of a critical view.
Yeah, I think Riddler is top down, right? Yeah. He's going after the system.
Yes.
And Batman is, ground up, which is to say he's going after the effects of that system.
Yes.
Right? So in that way, very complementary.
Yes. So I think there's a little bit of dissonance here between, okay, the Riddler obviously is very violent and brutal, right? The way that he's killing people. But he's taking, as you mentioned, from the top down, he's taking down people who are undeniably bad and corrupt. So why is Batman, who is himself an admitted vigilante, out to try to stop someone who's essentially doing the same thing that he's doing, albeit kind of with different methods? And I found that, I mean, when you just watch the movie, you see like he's trying to stop someone from killing people, but if you examine it a little bit closer, don't you think it's a little bit hypocritical saying, hey, I don't like this vigilante who's killing bad guys. I should be the only vigilante who's allowed to kind of beat up bad guys.
No, but I think so that's where I think the movie was actually quite brilliant, is because at the end of the movie, remember when they unmask one of Riddler's guys and he asks, who are you?
Yeah.
The bad guy says the same thing Batman, which is, I am vengeance.
I'm vengeance.
And I think what that was the light turning on for Batman, which is to say, hey,
I'm a bad guy.
It's not, no, but I think it's where he goes and says, hey, I need to be more than just vengeance, right? I need to be a beacon of light. I need to be hope, because that's what the city needs.
Yeah.
Right? It's not good enough that me being the guy who kicks the butts of street level crime, that's not good enough anymore. right? Like that's what I was focused on. But now I need to hit the bigger targets. I need to hit the crime bosses. I need to go after the corrupt mayors. And that for me is the whole point, because when Paul Dano is being interrogated by the Batman, he says the same thing. We're two sides of the same coin, right? He raises exactly the same question or the point that you've raised, which is, I'm doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
I just don't have qualms about killing people, right? Whereas Batman says, look, you can't change the system by killing people. So that's not to say that Batman's not going to change and start killing people, but that's what Batman's saying is like, I can't just work in the dark, right? I can't just be that guy that everyone is scared of in the shadows, which, by the way, they did a fantastic job of showing at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
I need to be that beacon, and I thought it was really done effectively when he's literally carrying that red flare and leading people out of the flooded arena as a leader, which is something that he would never do, right? Because the Batman works in the dark. He works in the shadow, whereas now he is the light. Oh my God. I thought that was one of the most stunning scenes in the movie.
With the red flare?
Not just the red flare, but him working in the light. Like him being a savior to people, not just him not being just someone to scare bad guys, but him as being a symbol of good for regular people as well.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say you've changed my mind on that a little bit. I mean, I still stand by the hypocritical argument, but you're right in terms of the shift that causes Batman to take towards the end. I agree that's very powerful. I thought the red flare scene was super cool, and I thought there was also something that I couldn't really put my finger on at the time, which was he reached out his hand to try to help people, and it was just the kid who... Yeah,
it was the orphaned kid from the beginning of the movie.
Who obviously has... I mean, it's pretty obvious. I mean, there's some... recognition between these two that they're kind of kindred souls, about the same age when, they brutally lost their fathers. That the kid accepts the help. The mayor, who's preaching throughout the movie about how we got to help each other, we got to reach out, blah, 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 is like, hey, I'm not going to grab your hand. I'm not going to take help. And then she sees a kid do it. And then she kind of begrudgingly puts out her hand. I thought it was, kind of a bad commentary on the mayor and that whole group of people, but that's not really I don't think a critical element, but I thought it was cool that the kid was right away willing to accept that assistance. And obviously, I think we saw it in like 2 or 3 scenes that, Pattinson and the kid kind of make eye contact, and they seem to have like this little vibe going in terms of, hey, we can identify with each other and such.
Yeah. And for the love of God, Warner Brothers, if you're listening, do not make that kid Robin.
Oh, that's an interesting point.
Do not make that kid Robin, for the love of God.
Oh, that's an interesting point.
I know how these movie guys work, and they're going to see that, and they're going to be like, oh, that'll be a great way of linking the first 2 movies. Let's do that, and it'll be so cool. That is not going to be cool. I'm telling you right now.
So can I ask, where do you see, you're so faithful to the comic books, and where do you see Robin in the Batman universe? Do you just want to keep, but not in this one, like in anyone, do you just want to keep Robin out entirely because you don't like him? Do you think there's no place for Robin? Because Robin is in the comic books, right?
No, I think there's a lot of place for Robin. Don't get me wrong, because I think what's really important is that Robin becomes, Robin starts out as, Batman's ward Bruce Wayne's ward and Batman's sidekick, and transitions into a superhero of his own right, who becomes like another Batman-esque vigilante, but working in Bloodhaven, right? In the other city. There's lots of space in this world for realistic heroes, right? Because this is a quote-unquote realistic world. What I don't want to see is them try to shoehorn as many characters as they can in the name of quote-unquote fan service. Right? Because that's it. Because they ultimately will do it in such a cheesy and terrible way. Like it will lose credibility in this, right? Do you want to, in this world, do you see a spandex-clad child from a circus lose his parents and then become the ward of Bruce Wayne. Does that make any sense in the world that Matt Reeves has built?
No. Yeah.
It makes absolutely no sense. So, like, why would you do that?
Yeah. Another issue, which is not really at the forefront, you mentioned how Alfred was, diminished a little bit. What about Thomas Wayne? I mean, Thomas Wayne from, the original Batman from Batman Returns. I mean, we've been shoved the Thomas Wayne narrative, right? Him and his wife and their son were going to the cinema. They were tragically mugged and gunned down in the back alley. And that narrative's kind of shifted a little bit. Now, I mean, Thomas Wayne is made to be a little bit of a bad guy. What's your thought on this?
So, the comics I grew up with was such that the Thomas and Martha Waynes were great people.
Yeah.
However, I also know that in the newer rendition of the comics, which is, I think the DC 52 and the quote unquote modern era of comics, they've changed that. They retconned that to say that Thomas Wayne was, in general, at least in public eye, a good guy, but to achieve the goodness, he had to do some bad stuff. So, Nolan's Batman didn't touch upon that at all.
Nope.
Which was fine for me because that was the Batman. That was the Thomas and Martha Wayne that I grew up with.
Yes.
I don't have a problem with.
What about like the Joker? It started in the Joker, right? In the Joker, I think is the first time.
I don't even want to talk about that because I think they bastardized that whole thing there.
But that was really the first time. Yeah. That the Thomas Wayne, for me, the Thomas Wayne narrative was this good,
he's a bit of a jerk,
husband, father, philanthropist. Yes, he's wealthy, but he's still giving back to the city and so on and so forth. And then in the Joker, you see him as like really an asshole, like at best, a cold asshole. At worst, potentially, I don't know if we would say, how did he have an affair with the Joker's mother?
Yeah, so theoretically, I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
And we don't really know, but just putting the idea out there was kind of enough to kind of like damage his reputation, at least in viewers' minds. I thought that was, okay, it was interesting, but I mean, it definitely like, smudged his character. And then what we see now is that he was being blackmailed and, his family had all this other drama in it and he tried to cover something up. He tried to bribe a reporter. When that didn't work, he went to Falcone to try to maybe
silence the reporter.
Yeah, like intimidate him. Oh, and then unbeknownst to him, Falcone, a mobster, killed the guy, and then Andy Serkis, to try to somehow rectify his reputation, said, but he was going to go to the police, as though that makes it all better. I mean, the whole thing just really leaves an ugly smell, I think, on Thomas Wayne. And maybe that's good for storytelling. But again, I mean, there's real implications to that, right?
Yeah, emotionally, I think we don't like that because, that's not the Batman mythology we grew up with.
No, yeah.
But in terms of, first of all, in terms of the Gotham City that is depicted in the current era, right? Which is to say Matt Reeves and even Christian Bale, it makes sense. It makes sense. It's a filthy, corrupt city, and where even the best of us has to, do a little bit of dumpster diving to get the goals that they want, right?
Maybe.
So again, we don't like it on a personal level, but in terms of a story level, I think it gives a little bit more it gives a little bit more depth to Batman's origin story, which again, I don't like it, but I don't dislike it either. I get it. It makes sense.
It also probably brings Catwoman and Batman a little bit closer together, although they may not kind of know everything about each other. It brings them a little bit closer as kind of kindred souls, right? Where they both have father figures that they're not really proud of or have done something that's damaged them, and they're trying to obviously like fight their way through their past history and make amends and so forth. So in that sense, it makes them more kindred souls than if Thomas Wayne is from the white shoe perfect family. Selena's from, basically abandoned by her gangster father. Yeah, then they're kind of a little bit of an odd couple. This makes them a little bit more kindred souls where they could kind of share something in common, right?
Can I also say I'm super glad he didn't reveal his secret identity to her, even though he wanted to.
Yeah.
Even though he wanted to, I'm glad she was like, no, you stay as Batman for this movie. We'll worry about you as Bruce Wayne for the sequel. All right.
Yeah.
I was really happy they did that.
Yeah.
And in general, I like that.
Yeah, I agree. So, this is a very localized Batman. By that I mean Batman doesn't really have any concerns outside of his Gotham City parameters, right? Whereas maybe when we see him mature a little bit more into, the Batman versus Superman or the Justice League Batman, you'll see that he has a little bit more of a worldview. But right now, to be honest, he doesn't give a hoot about anything outside of the Gotham City grid, basically, right? Yeah,
but I don't even see him as being worldly at all until he joins the Justice League. And even in the Justice League, he's always been like that cantankerous guy who's like, listen, I'm only in it for the greater good and only if you need me. Otherwise, let me worry about Gotham.
What do you think of that, though? I guess
that
follows like the comic book lore, right? Which is
not just the lore, but like that's also fully aligned with his character. His whole life is about rebuilding Gotham City. He doesn't care about, and frankly, in the DC universe, there's no other city as downtrodden as Gotham City. Right? Yeah. Star City is doing very well. Metropolis is doing very well. So why would he be worried about anyone else?
Let me ask you a question, though. Just theoretically, we've seen kind of at the beginning when there was the original mayor, Mayor Mitchell, right? Mm-hmm. Right? Mayor Mitchell is talking about, his plan. I can't remember what it's called, the renewal plan or something, right? And then the other person who's running against him as mayor, basically says, look, you've been doing this renewal program for how many years? Nothing's changed. Things are worse than ever. Like, you need to face reality. This isn't working. Do you kind of feel the same thing for Batman? Like, Batman is, hey, I've got to clean up this city. The city never really gets cleaned up, though, does it?
Yeah, but remember, this is only his second year of doing it in this movie. Yeah. Right? And even though he cops it to it himself, right? Like in that intro monologue that he gives, he's talking about how he's already feeling tired about the fact that nothing seems to be changing. Yeah. But I think that's the whole transition in this movie, which is towards the end where he's like, I can't just be the guy in the shadows scaring street level criminals. I need to be the guy in the light who's scaring everybody. Right? And I think that's the point of this story, which is to say, yes, he's maybe a little jaded by street crime. And of course, he wants to take down street crime because, that's how his parents died. But I think if he really wants to effect change in Gotham, he probably needs to start going after the Carmines. The Falcons, the Penguins, the corrupt mayors. And let's take a quick break to hear from our friends at Thanks for Coming In.
Hey, I'm Jillian Clare, the host of the podcast Thanks for Coming In. I've accumulated some pretty crazy audition stories over the past 20 years, and so have my friends.
And I was like, you know what? No, not going to do this.
And then Disney calls and is like, we need you to come test for the Ant-Man movies.
I didn't know if my scene was going to get cut or not.
Ooh, I could play that.
Tune in every Thursday to hear your favorite actors tell the funniest, saddest, and most cringeworthy audition stories. Sometimes even the one that got away. Thanks for Coming In is available on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts.
If you ever wanted to hear some great behind-the-scenes stories about Hollywood, make sure to subscribe to Thanks for Coming In.
So, Pete, we've watched 3 hours of The Batman. It seems inevitable that we're going to have not just one sequel, but at least 2 sequels from this, right? They didn't make all this promotion, bring in Robert Pattinson, just to do one standalone film. What do you see going forward? It's 2022 March. Where are we going now for the future of Batman and Justice League and DC based on this?
Okay, so I'll caveat this by saying that we still need to see what Robert Pattinson's going to do in the Flash movie, which is coming out at the end of this year.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh,
so
yeah.
There are rumors, and I believe it's confirmed that he's also going to be in that Flash movie. So, again, I'm not a huge fan of that because, this is the first iteration, and they're already throwing him into a multiverse. I hope it's a...
Too soon.
Yeah, I hope it's a nothing cameo. Just because, let the guy breathe a little bit. Let him flex out his muscles in the Batsuit a little bit.
Yeah.
Before you throw him into a shared universe, which is right now teetering on the edge of destruction because it's really not great. But anyway, where do I see this going? I see a continuation of a slightly darker Batman. I don't see it as being as dark as Zack Snyder. I don't see it as being as light as
anyone else.
Anyone else of Batman 66. I think that's what's really important is that Matt Reeves has struck a very good tone in terms of Batman, right? Because this is a Batman who is a detective. This is not a Batman who is a militia one-man army with a tank at his disposal.
Can I ask you a question though, Pete? When you say, help me understand this, if you say this is not as dark as Zack Snyder's Batman,
yeah.
If I were to say that to someone, I feel like they would say to me, well, what do you mean? Tell me, what do I mean by that? Why is it not as dark?
For one, actual cinematography, that movie was entirely too dark. You couldn't see anything on screen.
Literally dark.
Literally dark. But two, it was dark in the sense that I think Zack Snyder looked at what Christopher Nolan did and said, how do I make my Batman more gritty and more realistic and more a representation of what a real Batman would look like in today's world? Oh, well, I'd give him a really awful backstory that everyone has seen, but I'm going to show it again in super slow motion, and I'm really going to make a meal out of it. Totally unnecessary, right? What I like about this Batman is, hey, Batman, everyone knows who Batman is. I don't need to explain to you that his parents died in an alley. It's unnecessary.
Yeah.
Just take it for what it is, move on. Yeah. Just like people don't need to know anything about Superman's origins. We all know he's an alien from Krypton. Move on. Let's get to the real heart of the story.
Yeah.
And it was dark in the sense that also Batman was just so brooding and so angry all the time, right? In Zack Snyder. Ben Affleck, no smile. And that's not to say that you see Robert Pattinson smile and joke about here. But he wasn't I don't know. I didn't feel like he was so hardcore negative in this movie. Whereas I think Ben Affleck was just like a steaming pile of negativity the entire movie.
Yeah, I mean, those are really degrees of gray. I mean, as you mentioned, Pattinson is definitely not a bag of laughs here.
Yeah.
I mean, you could make a credible argument that he's not as negative as Ben Affleck, but I don't think anyone, even who would see this on its own, would say he was anywhere near the shade of optimistic or happy-go-lucky. I mean,
but that's the point was that even in the Justice League, characters that are supposed to be optimistic were also portrayed as super dark. Superman isn't a dark character. He is not a character that's devoid of joy, right?
True.
And in fact, the whole point was that the S is supposed to represent hope. Okay, well, you can't be a hopeful guy if you're always scowling, right?
The S represents hope?
Yeah, that was in the movies. So I was just like, you
Should
can't.
Have an H.
Yeah, well, exactly. So you know what I mean? Like, you can't be the brooding. Everyone can't be the brooding bad guy or a good guy, right? And that's the problem, was that in Zack Snyder's movie, everyone was the brooding guy. There was no one who was really light and brought joy to the table. And that's why, you theoretically, at least in the comics and the cartoons, that was the Flash's job. And even Superman was a little jokey. And, for every brooding character, there was somebody who balanced it out. Whereas in Zack Snyder's movie, there was no balance. It was all dark all the time.
So, I mean, I guess that's a good point. So if we're looking at this as this was the first installment, right? We really like it. A sequel has to either advance the story or just kind of like reiterate the story just to bring in a lot of tickets, right? If we wanted to advance the story here, what would you craft as kind of like the narrative going forward? Like sketch this out on a few storyboards. Say, okay, pitch. I'm the studio. All right, Pete, pitch me the sequel. Tell me how we're going to do this to get people more engaged and say, wow, what a great sequel.
So I think
what does that storyboard look like?
I think it comes down to who the next villain is going to be. Right?
Okay, I'm asking. Who do you think?
So in this world that Matt Reeves has built, I don't see
it cannot be Joker
villains.
Yeah.
We'll get to that. But I don't think it can be a superpowered villain in the sense that, and by superpowered, I mean supernaturally powered.
Yeah.
As much as I'd love to see Clayface on TV or on the big screen, how do you justify a character made of clay in this world? It's too difficult, right?
Yeah. This is not Spider-Man. This is not Spider-Man. Yeah.
Yeah, and even, exactly. It's not Spider-Man. It's not anything. This is too grounded for that, right? Yeah. So I started going through the list of the Rogues Gallery and started thinking about who are the different villains that could actually be here, right? So let's start with the big one first.
Yep.
Who could be in it, but I don't want to be in it. Joker, as you
cannot be Joker.
I don't want there to be another Joker.
It cannot be Joker.
We saw a glimpse of him in this movie. I think I hope that's all we see.
Where did we see that glimpse of Joker?
When you see Paul Dano talk to the guy in the prison in Blackgate.
But I didn't understand. Is that the Joker or is that someone else?
Oh, that is 150% the Joker. I would bet everything in my bank account that's the Joker. You had, if you look at, so first of all, there were mention of clowns, right? There was a mention of wearing a facade, wearing a mask on your face. Then there was also, when you looked at him, you didn't see his face, but you saw his profile clearly.
Yeah.
And that's the same profile of the Joker that's used in the Arkham games. It's the same look. It's not the Joker that we've seen with Heath Ledger. It's not the same Joker we've seen with Joaquin Phoenix. Yeah. This looks exactly like the Joker from the cartoons and from the comics and from the Arkham video games. And for the love of God, Warner Brothers, if you're listening, do not put in the Joker.
Obviously, they're listening to this podcast. That goes without saying.
Clearly. But the problem you're going to have is that, one, you're going to retread water that Heath Ledger has already done because
I agree.
that was a realistic take on the Joker.
Yeah.
Two, you're going to have the issue of them also comparing it with Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, and then
the Suicide Squad Joker,
and then finally, oh my God, I don't even count him because Jared Leto was so bad. I don't even want to talk about him. It was terrible.
But it was a Joker.
For the love of God.
Yeah.
Huh? Yeah,
but so that's three. I agree. I think it retreads water. I think there's too much,
and it's too soon. We just saw the Joker in Joaquin Phoenix. Whether you liked it or didn't like it, whatever you say,
like it.
I personally didn't like it. I thought it glamorized mental illness.
Absolutely agree.
And I thought it wasn't. It didn't really help the cause of the Joker, right? As an anarchist. And that's fine. Look, it did well. It was very successful in the box office. Yep. But I think, they have a responsibility not to show that kind of depiction because it was also then, a rallying cry for a lot of people who are on that fringe, right? Yep. Anyway, but again,
who else is in the Rogues Gallery? Okay.
So who I think would actually be ideal. Here's my list, okay?
Okay.
I think you could do a phenomenal job with Deadshot, who we saw in the Suicide Squad, but I mean the real Deadshot, not Will Smith's Deadshot. I think it would be a phenomenal opportunity to see the Black Mask, who again we saw in Birds of Prey, but I don't want to see Ewan McGregor as much as I love him. I didn't think that that depiction of Black Mask was great, and I think it's got more to do with that.
Who is Black Mask?
He's also an underworld mob guy. He's a mob boss, and he's a normal guy, but he wears a mask that's like in the shape of a black skull. And he's like a big arms dealer. He worked out of Blackgate Prison. Like, anyway, he's lots of different interpretations and lots of different stories about him, but he's just a really bad guy. And in this world, it would be really interesting to see a power play between the Penguin and Black Mask, because now there's like a little bit of a void because Falcone's gone. Then you have Hush, who I think would be an amazing bad guy for this world, especially because we don't see too much of Bruce Wayne as a kid, and we've already now been a little bit exposed to Thomas Wayne. So if you really wanted to do a little bit more of a deep dive to Thomas Wayne's life as a semi-bad guy and Bruce Wayne's life as a kid, I think having Hush would be excellent. I think he would be a great bad guy. Then
what about Two-Face? I mean, we saw Harvey Two-Face was pretty iconic in the Christian Bale.
Harvey Dent played we didn't get to see him again. I think Harvey Dent you could do, but maybe not in the sequel. I think maybe in the third movie when you have a little bit. You set him up.
You need to set him up a little bit, right?
A little bit. And the last two guys, I think, or there's actually a couple more, but like in terms of A-tier villains, I think that's it. But in terms of B-tier villains, you could do someone like Hugo Strange, who's like this psychologist who actually figures out who Batman is. Yeah. And you could introduce him as working with the Riddler or with the Joker or whoever he is at the prison. You could do something with Victor Zsasz, who's a serial killer. And if you want to step away from this traditional bad guy base, you could look at someone like Simon Stagg, who is a rival to Bruce Wayne as a business magnate.
Oh, I like that idea.
Right? Where we see the battle elevate from the streets to the boardroom.
I like that idea.
What's important about all these bad guys is A, they're realistic, right? Yeah. You can see them existing in this world. You can see them existing in any world, right? And B, all of them require a significant level of detective work, just like we saw this Batman do with the Riddler, where you're actually analyzing clues, where you're actually analyzing crimes, and you're looking at why certain things are being done to certain people, right? I agree. Or maybe Deadshot is working for Simon Stagg, and you combine the two of them, right? Yeah. Or maybe Simon Stagg has hired Victor Zsasz to be a serial killer to distract, and Deadshot to distract the Batman while he's taking over from, and doing other things in the boardroom that would be to Gotham City's peril, right? Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot. And if you want to go into a little bit more comic booky side, and if you want to go into something that's more like, well, we've now established this is year 5. Batman's doing this for 5-10 years. Gordon is now commissioner. We need someone who's a little bit more on the same level as Batman. Who can we elevate? Maybe you do someone like Azrael, right? Who's a bad guy, who's very similar to Batman. Same, if not the same, very similar skill set. Both regular people who are wearing suits of armor. And Azrael also has the same goals, which is to say that I want to eliminate corruption. But the difference is I'm willing to kill people to do it. Right? Okay. And so now you have like basically a light Batman versus a dark Batman fighting each other.
So that's on the villains or the rogue side.
Yeah.
But there also has to be like another protagonist, right? Are we going to see Catwoman back again? Are we going to see, as you mentioned, Is Robin going to be making an appearance? Who else is going to be on or is this going to start to be universe? And you're going to see Flash, Aquaman. Kind of surprised Aquaman didn't make an appearance with all the water that we saw at the end of this one.
Right. So I think this comes down to, again, what happens with the Flash movie.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're doing with that. I don't know how they want to integrate, if they want to integrate. And if they don't want to integrate this, right, then I think what you do is start building the foundations to say, hey, let's talk about Robin, but let's modernize him. Let's not make him the orphan child of a circus act. Let's make him, whatever it is. I don't know. Honestly, I haven't thought that much about it. But let's start thinking about how Batman can work with another character who's aligned in terms of that, but this gets disillusioned and moves on. It lets Warner Brother build another franchise around another character. Or let's definitely bring Catwoman back. I really liked the chemistry between the two of them. I liked how they worked off of each other.
I feel like she has to come back. I think it's just a matter of how big her role is going to be. Is she going to come at the end? Kind of she sees the bat, symbol at the penultimate battle, or is she going to be there right from the get-go? I think that's the only question, but I think absolutely she's got to be in the next one.
So I really want to see her back because I thought she did such a good job. I really liked Zoe Kravitz. I also think we need to see, I don't think we need to see Robin, but what I would like to see them is lay the foundations. And again, this depends purely on if they're trying to build a franchise out, right? Is lay the foundations for eventually bringing in a Robin in, right? Or eventually bringing in, putting in the foundations for having a Batwoman in who is not related to her, to Batman in any way, shape, or form. Or, something like that.
Yeah.
Right? Where you start to bring in the Bat family, which no one has shown on any of the cinematic universes.
True. One of the opening previews that I saw was for like all the upcoming kind of DC movies. So you mentioned the Flash. Flash is coming June?
I think November, actually. I think Flash and Aquaman are both like November, December.
Yeah, so I saw Flash, Aquaman, and Black Adam with The Rock.
Yeah, Black Adam, that's I think coming out in July. So I think that's their summer blockbuster is going to be The Rock. And then Aquaman and Flash will come out at the end of the year.
Both of them at the end of the year?
Yeah, I think one's in November.
So 3 in 20. So they're going to have 4 in 2022? Wow.
Yeah, remember pandemic. I think The Flash was supposed to be a while ago, and so was Aquaman. So
these are the 4, and then that means probably 2023 is going to be a little bit quiet, right?
I'm not sure what's on the slate beyond this year.
What's left? There's not another Superman.
I don't know only because I don't.
There's
really
not another
care.
Wonder Woman. So well, you have to care. This is films and stuff. You have to care, Pete.
No, I care about our content, but I mean, yeah, okay, fair enough.
I hear your point. I'm pulling your leg, but I hear your point, which is none of these have left a cliffhanger where you're like, I've got to see what's next.
Yeah, the universe has done a very bad job of that.
Yeah,
the DC universe.
Yeah. So, and as you mentioned, there's no integration yet, which is also leaving you a little bit wanting for something, right? So, but I mean, again, if they're going to have 4, the way that we just counted it, they're going to have Batman now, they're going to have Black Adam with The Rock, they're going to have Flash, and they're going to have Aquaman, which I don't even know what's happening with Aquaman. I have to say that one I'm not excited about. If they're going to have those 4 in 2022, I haven't heard anything about another Wonder Woman. Is Gal Gadot reprising that role?
She's been the most successful for the franchise, so they have to make a third one.
And we know, maybe it'll be Wonder Woman 1994. We know that we're not even sure that Henry Cavill is going to continue to be Superman. So that means there's no Superman. So in DC, what else is left? If they're going to have
how
these...
how do you build a Justice League without Superman? You don't. He is the centerpiece. He and Batman are the centerpiece of the Justice League. You just don't. It doesn't work without them.
Yeah.
And this Batman doesn't fit with any of the existing Justice League members.
Well, I agree, because it's also weird to have Justice League. I mean, we recently had to get our minds around Ben Affleck, Gal Gadot, Aquaman, Jason Momoa, and Flash as a team, right? I mean, that took a lot of mental gymnastics, I think, for all of us.
Yeah, and I mean, brute force, and it didn't work, but fine, they still brute forced it there.
And it would be different if you're switching out Aquaman with a different Aquaman. But that movie, the Justice League, was about Batman, Bruce Wayne, Ben Affleck, going out with all his considerable resources, using his detective skills, which is kind of cool, and saying, hey, I've identified all these people. I've now identified with all my technology there is an Aquaman and where he's located. So now that we've seen kind of the lead of the Justice League, getting all these people together, getting them on the same page, am I supposed to now pretend that didn't happen?
Yeah.
And have a new Batman substituted, but still Gal Gadot, same Superman, same everyone else? It's weird.
Tell me about it. So this is what I mean.
Weird.
Like, it's just, this is why I hope that the integration doesn't happen, right? Like, this is one of the few times where you're just like, I don't want to see a combined universe, because frankly speaking, Matt Reeves did such a good job with the Batman.
Yeah.
I don't need to see that.
But could we have something where there's a slower integration? So, for example, we've got Batman. Let's add him with the Flash. Okay? And then I don't know what the story is with Black Adam. Let's say we add him. Let's keep Wonder Woman out of it. Maybe we bring back Cyborg or someone, and we start to one by one reunite a band, because I just don't think you can swap out. Batman's not Ringo Starr. You can't just say, okay, well, it used to be Ben Affleck, now it's Pattinson. Even though Pattinson wanted to be alone, we're going to kind of pretend that he started this thing. It doesn't work.
He's either like Lennon or McCartney. He's one of the two most important. So look, I agree with you. It's going to happen, but that is a multi-year process going on to maybe even like a decade. And
we'll be here.
Spoiler alert.
We'll be here.
The important question is, will Robert Pattinson be here?
Good thing we started with episode 0001, because we saw that DC is going to go on a 10-year bender to fix all this Zack Snyder nonsense. Yeah.
But I mean, you've got now a case where DC has a hell of a job on their hands to really fix what they've done. Yeah? I don't envy the writers there. I fully applaud Matt Reeves and his team of writers. Yeah. They have done something which I've been hoping to see on screen for a long time, which is they've made Batman actually look like he could be the world's smartest detective.
Yeah.
Right? The other Batman just hasn't done that.
That's true, but at the cost of creating a super weird Bruce Wayne. That's really one of my frustrations, is that
I hope that changes too, right? Because now that in the second movie, that will be what we should see, is the growth of Bruce Wayne, who also recognizes that he can't be that hermit anymore. He needs to be outgoing, and the mayor called him out on it. He needs to be outgoing. He needs to be spending his billions. He needs to be revitalizing the economy. He needs to be doing things. And maybe that's what we see in the sequel. And maybe that's where Simon Stagg comes in, right? And we see a battle of the boardrooms there. There's a lot of places it can go. This is just one idea. But if you want to see a consistent narrative and a consistent narrative of growth for Batman, you don't just see him fighting crime on the streets. You also see him fighting the battles in the boardroom.
So you know what? I hear you. Actually, that's a very good way to do it. I mean, that makes a lot of sense from a storytelling perspective. The one question I would have is that are we taking a step back by having this great Batman movie, and the sequel to Batman is really called Bruce Wayne Getting His Crap Together? You know, and it's here you said, look, this is 90% Batman, 10% Wayne, which is what we all wanted, right? We came to see, it's called the Batman.
That's right.
Is the next one about, okay, well, the Batman's got his life sorted. Now let's cut to the life of Bruce Wayne.
And
getting a haircut,
9 to 5 kicking in.
You know, like Alfred, like cutting him a new suit. Yeah, exactly. This 9 to 5 montage of him, you know, cleaning up his act and studying papers and getting down to business in his office. We're like, okay, well, I like where Bruce Wayne is going, but is this really what we wanted, you know, a 3-hour ticket to, which was to see Bruce Wayne get his stuff together? He should have had his stuff together, and it should have been Batman who was finding his niche. We already solved the movie about Batman finding his niche.
So
is that what we want?
No, I agree with you. Again, that was my principal complaint about this movie, is that Bruce Wayne isn't Bruce Wayne that we know, and he should have had his shit together. I rightfully agree with that.
Yes.
So fair enough and fair play. But what I'm saying is, because he doesn't, we're going to have to see that, or we should see that. Yeah. And I'm not saying we should spend 2.5 hours as Bruce Wayne and 30 minutes as Batman, but we should certainly spend more than 10 minutes as Bruce Wayne, right? Yeah. We should spend at least half an hour as Bruce Wayne, and the rest of the time as Batman.
So that also gets to a good question, which is, we liked Robert Pattinson as Batman. Will we like him as much as Bruce Wayne? I mean, forget this first Bruce Wayne, right? We didn't like the emo Bruce. Even if he gets his stuff together, you know, is there enough embracing of Pattinson as that? For, as you mentioned once before, Ben Affleck is kind of universally accepted enough that people kind of liked him as Bruce Wayne, right? Same with Michael Keaton. Okay, some of the others failed, but is Pattinson gonna, you know,
let's put it this way. He can do it, right? Based on his recent cinema outgoings, I thought he was very good in
Tenet.
The Lighthouse, in Tenet, in all these other scenes. Yeah. You can see him being super charismatic, right? Yeah. In Tenet, he was extremely charismatic. Yeah.
He was very likable. In Tenet, he was very likable.
I liked him.
Yeah. He was very likable.
So there's nothing stopping him from pulling out the charm for the Batman 2 as Bruce Wayne. Absolutely nothing. And I think he could do it. And now that we've seen him as the brooding guy, I can totally see him as like the guy in the tux who loves it and he's living it out there. But the moment the doors close and the last guest leaves, he tears it off and he's like, oh, that was terrible. I hated it, blah, blah, blah. But then Alfred's like, well, it's part of the job, you know?
So this is your job description. Yep.
So it's one of those things where if there's anyone who can definitely do it based on roles in different movies, it's Robert Pattinson.
Okay.
Yeah, I like it. I see there's definitely places to go with this. But what I don't want to see, and I know this is a little bit of a tangent, did you know that in the States, AMC, the cinema chain, is actually charging $1.50 more for tickets for this movie than for any other movie?
So I did not know it was $1.50. I did think I saw a headline that they're charging more. What's the justification? Because it's a popular movie, or it's longer?
Because it's a popular movie. Because they think it's going to be a blockbuster smash.
Can I ask you something? I mean, that's a tangent. I don't really have a strong feeling. I mean, $1.50 is maybe not a deal breaker, but I guess it's a little bit annoying. Why? I mean, you know, I used to live in Turkey. In Turkey, they do something super interesting. For all movies, they have an intermission. They stop the movie. I mean, they just pause it, like VCR style, where everyone is mid-kiss, mid-punch, mid-whatever. Yeah. And then this happy little song comes on, and they say, intermission. And there's no timer. I think it's ad hoc. It's 10 minutes. And it's so smart, not just as a courtesy.
Brilliant.
But financially, everyone gets up, buys another tub of popcorn, another Mountain Dew, another something, right?
They go to the bathroom, they reset their counters. So
what is the purpose of why isn't this universal?
So as you know, I also lived abroad. I was in India.
Yes.
And Indian movies in general are very long. If your average, Western Hollywood movie is, 90 minutes to let's say 120 minutes max on average.
Yeah.
The Indian movies used to be, I can't speak now, but like Hindi movies from Bollywood used to be like 3 hours, 3.5 hours, right? And so for that reason, movies actually got filmed with intermission breaks.
Oh.
Right? And so like there was a time in the movie where everyone in the different cinemas there would be like, okay, we all know this is at exactly 1 hour, 45 minutes, you can hit the intermission button. The lights would go on in the cinema. The screen would close. And in India, they go one step further. They have like people with mobile concession stands come into the theater.
Oh, it's so smart.
You don't need to go into the hallway anymore. If you don't need to go to the bathroom, you can just stay put and relax.
I'm asking for 10 minutes. Oh, it is a money maker. I cannot understand why it's not done.
A bio break would have been so helpful in this movie.
I agree.
It's a long movie.
At the end, it's an exaggeration to say I was exhausted, but it's a long time to just be sitting. I mean, even on an airplane, you stand up at least once. You move around a little bit. Yep. It's a long time, And to be honest, I just didn't want to miss anything. I'm really scared that if I stand up and I go out, that's going to be when there's this iconic scene and you're going to say, hey, didn't you love it when Batman took the red flare and he helped? I'd be like, no, what happened? When did that happen?
I took a preemptive bathroom break in the middle of the movie because I knew that it was going to happen towards the end. Like I would have to go. So as soon as there was I can't even remember what happened, but some small revelation happened and I booked it. Like I flew out of the theater, flew back in. And it's I knew I was okay because the two characters were still in the same conversation. Oh, so I was fine. Yeah. And I knew that I missed something, but I didn't miss anything earth shattering. So I was okay. And I'm glad I did because otherwise I know that I would have missed something towards the last third of the movie.
Towards the end, I was really tired. I saw, like I said, I saw an 8:15. I was out of there by midnight with the credits and everything. But I was like the last 30 minutes, I was kind of like, I'm enjoying this, but I'm really tired. I'm ready for this thing to be over. I kind of just want to stand up and do some lunges or something and just kind of stretch my quads. You even see the people in front of you, first it's a couple that's kind of holding hands and touching shoulders. At the end of the movie, the dude's got his legs up. The lady's all sprawled sideways. Everyone's just exhausted. It's an overnight flight.
I will say, look, by the way, to anyone still listening, I know it's a long episode today.
Almost as long as Batman.
It's not. This isn't a movie that makes you feel the length in the sense that the 3 hours do go by relatively quickly.
It's true. It's true.
But 3 hours is still 3 hours. Right?
Yeah.
You may not realize that it's been 3 hours, but your bladder definitely will. Right?
Yeah.
So in the sense that I still think you should watch it in the cinema, but definitely plan for it.
Yeah.
Pace out your bottle of water or your Mountain Dew or your Pepsi or whatever you're drinking.
Yeah.
Don't drink it all during the trailers.
Yeah.
Because
I had to pace out my popcorn. I was so worried about popcorn. Usually when I get popcorn, halfway through the trailers, I'm at the, half done with my popcorn. I'm just so excited. And here I was just put it to the side, This is you gotta go for the long game on this. You'll need it later. Exactly. You'll need like a rush of sugar or salt later. Like, just hold tight. You can do it.
Exactly. So speaking of trailers, by the way, I don't know what trailers you saw, but there's a trailer for a movie coming out on the 22nd of April, 2022. And I want to mark this. I want everyone to mark this date on their calendar as a date that they have to go see.
Done.
The movie called The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, starring,
Elvis. Elvis?
Nope. Starring your favorite and mine, Nicolas Cage.
What? There's a Nicolas Cage movie?
It gets so good. Wait. It gets even better. All right. Are you ready for this, Ethan?
Yes.
Nicolas Cage stars as Nicolas Cage.
He's playing himself in a movie?
Are
you serious?
In a movie where he's gone broke and he gets hired by a drug kingpin who loves his movies.
I've seen this. I've seen this trailer. I'm so excited. I can barely sit still. I'm so excited for this movie. I think I saw it before I saw Spider-Man. I did not see it this time, but I was also seeing that. That looks cool. Yeah, I can see that.
Sorry, yeah. Anyway, so look, we went off on a Nicolas Cage related tangent, which means it's totally acceptable.
Oh, true.
But The Batman, excellent movie. Really, really good. Well worth watching. And honestly, I think that in terms of if you're going to start comparing it to the Christopher Nolan movies, is comparable in terms of quality. Different, and not bad, not good. I'm not going to get into the argument of which is better or which is worse. But I will say that for me personally, I think this is probably the second best version of a live action Batman we've seen after Heath Ledger's Dark Knight.
Yeah, I think that what I should do is I should see The Dark Knight again, because it's been many years and I've probably got some biases for better or for worse against that movie. I should see that again and I could probably make a better judgment. But I would say knee-jerk reaction, and this is again the day after I saw The Batman, if I was all alone and those are my only two options for entertainment, I would probably choose The Dark Knight. But again, that's just because it's been much longer since I've seen it. But I may see that movie and change my mind again and be like, oh, yeah, I thought this was better than it is. This is so dated. It's so boring. It's so slow. I want to go see Pattinson again and pick up some stuff I didn't catch the first time.
Right. My review and my score for this is a must watch at the cinema.
I echo that score. Same thing. Must watch at cinema.
Guys, if you have any comments or if you think that this was a terrible movie or if you loved it for a variety of reasons that we didn't touch upon, we'd love to hear from you.
And thanks everyone for sitting through a very long episode, right? Thanks for coming in. We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.